What things are causing couples to fight? And then the second part of the question is, and how can they identify the underlying issues causing the fights?
So what issues are causing them to fight?
What things, so there's probably a lot of things that could cause somebody to fight,
Right.
but what are some major things that might cause people to fight, or ways of going about things that might cause a fight?
Okay.
And how can they identify the underlying issues behind those fights?
Oh, okay. I think fights start from very mundane issues. Fights don't come from kind of the big topic issues, because I feel like we actually address those more often than some of the mundane, everyday issues that exist in our marriages. So I think one of the ways to identify that you might be getting towards a fight, if there's a small thing in your marriage that you are leaving untouched, that will develop into a fight eventually. Like if you're just ignoring that issue completely because you think this is such a small issue, that will be the thing that you will fight about in the future. I could be wrong about that, but I think a lot of the big issues that we encounter in our marriage, there's definitely going to be things that you fight about with those. Finances, you're going to fight about kids, you're going to fight about
In-laws.
Yeah. Those are the things, though, that I think get addressed most often. Still could cause fights, but they get addressed most often. And the more that you're addressing something, the less you're going to fight about it.
Yeah.
Because that means conversation's continual. Conversation is happening around these areas. The areas that seemingly are, not as important, I feel like are the danger zones that you have to watch out for, because those will creep in and you don't have any base conversations about those issues to reference, to know kind of where your spouse's heart is about those things, because you've never talked about them. So now it's just, you're coming cold to this, it's blowing up, and then you have to figure out where everybody's coming from. What's their angle? What's their emotion towards this? I just feel like it's something to watch out for.
I have a question about that.
Okay.
So I have a little bit of pushback. I agree with you, but also for those little things that aren't like the deep, bigger issues, like financial things and in-laws, how do you know you're not being nitpicky though? Like sometimes things will bother you.
By addressing those things? Like nitpicky because you talk about them?
Just making sure you're not being nitpicky though. Like, what if you're easily annoyed and it's your issue?
Oh, I got you.
Like, what if, you're just easily annoyed by a lot of things? Like, when can you be like, how can you discern, okay, this is my issue and I need to get over it? Or do I need to address it with my husband or my spouse?
Yeah. I think it's always dependent on your approach to that issue. You could be annoyed by it and still approach it in a way that's not nitpicky. You can still approach that issue in a way that's constructive, that leads to positive conversation with your spouse about that thing. I think a lot of it's the approach that people take. Why women get, they're all nags. It might just be that they don't have good enough tools to know how to approach a certain conversation with their husband about things, and it's received as nagging. It's received as nitpicky.
What do you think about this though? I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No.
What if the person that is being annoyed has a deeper issue that they haven't realized yet? And the example I have in my head, because I think that will help it be more specific, is let's just say the wife doesn't realize it, but she's actually nervous or jealous of the way her husband relates to any other woman. And so she's annoyed that he stayed at work longer because she thinks that he's talking to the women there at his work. And she's annoyed when he spends extra time talking to the cash register at Wawa because it's a woman. Yeah. And so she keeps bringing these things up, like, why did you, and maybe she doesn't even realize that that's her fear, but she's like, why did you take so long in Wawa? Or why did you stay out? Why did you stay later at work? Or why can't you just come home at the time? Now, maybe this is not the right way to approach the issue, but you hear what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like, how can somebody catch the deeper issue?
I think by answering the question, why do you care? I think all of us need to be able to answer, because that's the appropriate response from your spouse to any of the examples that you just gave.
Right.
Why do you care?
Yes.
that I'm talking to my coworkers that happen to be female?
Right.
Why do you care that I talk to that cashier
Yes.
for that long?
So
Why
maybe
do you know,
before you even come with the annoyance or the issue, make sure you know why.
yes.
Like make sure you can come and say, because once you take that second step to figure out why does this bother me so much,
right.
then you'll be able to get to that deeper issue that maybe you didn't want to admit to yourself
Right.
before.
And I think a better way to approach all the things you're calling annoyances or issues aren't actually annoyances or issues. They're feelings that we have. So I think it's best to...
But when you first look at it, at first glance, somebody might think they're looking at the issue as that tangible thing,
Right.
that he stayed after work longer.
Right.
When really what you're saying is not actually that. It's
That's why it might be good to investigate everything and start with it being a feeling before you might feel annoyed. You might feel a certain way about one of these things, one of
Right.
these occurrences. But if you start with, how do I feel about this, instead of calling it an issue? I just
Gotcha.
worry about, and I think people do this, where you call something an issue with no investigation.
mm-hmm.
How do you know that it's an issue?
Yeah,
Especially if you haven't brought it to the attention of the other person
Right.
in the issue.
right.
It could be a non-issue
Yeah.
if you talk to them about it. So start with, why do I feel this way?
Mm-hmm.
On anything, I think this is an issue, but why, or how do I feel about this thing?
Why
How
is
do
it
I-
bothering me?
Right. Why is it bothering me? I feel this way about it. Why is it bothering me? How do I feel about this thing?
Right.
So I think it's just a way of bringing it back from the precipice of, this is an issue
Yes.
or this is annoying, and saying, okay, I feel a certain way. Just start there.
Yes.
About everything. I feel a certain way. Why? And then you'll actually, if it still annoys you after you investigate that feeling, now you can go to your partner and you can go to your spouse and be like, this is why I keep getting annoyed when you spend so much time in front of the cashier at,
At Wawa.
At Wawa. I don't,
Yeah.
it's such a funny thing.
I like that because then you are getting to the deeper issue, whether it's with finances or something like that. You're like, oh, this bothers me because I have a fear that I'm not enough for you.
Okay.
Right. If we're talking about that issue, or maybe there's something with the finances that bothers somebody, and that's because they're afraid that, or maybe
You're
they're
getting into very specific issues now.
I'm
that-
getting specific so that people can understand that sometimes these little issues that seem little do have a deeper meaning.
Oh, okay.
Like something like, let's say you like to just go out on, I don't know, take a day off and you spend like $200, and then your spouse is like, that bothers them. Well, why does that bother them?
Yeah.
There's a reason behind that. It's not just that you spent that much money. Maybe they are afraid that, or maybe they're jealous that they didn't get to spend that. They're like, if you get to spend that much, I get to spend that much.
Right,
Or whatever
right.
the issue is, or maybe they don't think that there's enough for the next vacation that they wanted to take, or whatever that is. But there's like there's something deeper that you need to get
but
to.
it usually comes out very similar without investigating that deeper issue. Like it most of the time will just come out, why did you do that? Do you not care about our family and our finances?
Yes.
That's not the issue.
That's not the deeper issue.
Right. So just to what you're saying, if you don't investigate,
Mm-hmm.
there are these common ways that we poke at, nag,
Yes.
fight with our spouse because we're not investigating those things. So just like we should communicate more about all of these issues so that they don't lead to bigger issues,
Yeah.
we need to communicate with ourselves more so that these feelings don't become issues.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think that's good.